Well, hello, folk and flick. My name for the folks in the whole wide world. You gotta improv to improve. That's very important. I improv all the time, and some of my friends find it annoying, but I think it's fun. And I mean improv like creating characters, accents, going off on a spiel, crazy rant, talking to myself, trying to make things just from my imagination without following any directions, without following any instructions, and stuff like that. You improv to improve. It's a wonderful discipline to have, and it shouldn't be taken as a discipline. It should be a way of life. The way of improv to improve. TM. I could take that to a corporation and sell it tomorrow and make my nut. Anyway, I just wanted to say hi and tell you that I was listening to a Jim Rutt Show podcast with a gentleman. It's a current episode. Jonathan Rowson. Now, he's an interesting guy, and he's talking about our meta crisis pickle. I like it because it reminds me of that idiomatic phrase, we're in a pickle. But it's just a good metaphor. And he wrote an essay that's quite interesting, and I'll put it in the description of this video below, as well as a link to Jim Rutt Show podcast, which I greatly appreciate. I'm still working on this little essay or blog post about what's wrong with Sam Shepard. And as I've said all along, nothing's really wrong with the guy. He just gets stuck on certain perceptions and he won't budge. We're all stubborn creatures. All of us are, in certain ways, some more than others. The other thing I wanted to mention was that it seems to me there are people in the world for some reason or another who are concerned about big issues, you know? And they also have this idea that things can get a lot better. And then there are other people in the world who think things are great, just as they are, and don't want to think about anything like that. There are other people in the world who think that if everyone just had a culture like mine, we'd all be okay. But I know that's impossible. So I have to defend myself from all the other cultures in the world because, you know, they're not good. Mine's good. Theirs isn't. Othering, you know, talking about outsiders, scapegoating, that whole, proto-fascist thing or whatever. And there are all kinds of other people in the world in that whole spectrum of kinds of people in the world who think about the world in general or think about bigger picture subjects. And I like people who look at the bigger picture subjects and come from their own specific expertise in their own domain of interest or study or professionalism. And I tend to want to try to understand what they're saying and learn from them because it makes me understand the world I'm in better. And it also makes me more comfortable and happy about the world I'm in because I can see that there are so many brilliant, wonderful people in the world doing brilliant, wonderful things who are coming from a good place and want to improve things and help people and generally be really good folk and flick. And that excites me. It's a lot easier to make people angry and hateful and fearful, which I was talking about on my bicycle the other day. Little shout out to Pee Wee Herman. And it seems like we're kind of creatures that are easy to rile up, you know, a little bit of propaganda here, a little bit of misinformation there, a little bit of, you know, us and them, little bit of competition, a little bit of the rivalrous game, and on and on and on. And we can gin up an emotional response that's hateful or angry, annoyed, you know, some negative emotion, as opposed to saying, wow, look at that. That's interesting. That's curious. I want to know more about that. Tell me more about that. Let me know how you think. I'm ready to listen. Get up on the table over there, do a little dance, and make me believe it. You're attractive. I want to hear you. No, 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 no. I'm not trying to teach you how to pick people up. I'm just saying, having that curious, open-minded attitude where you look at people and you say, well, geez, this is interesting. When I lived in Japan for many, many years, I was there because I thought Japan was an interesting country, culture, people, language, the whole thing. And I was enamored with it. And so I enjoyed being in Japan. Sometimes I got frustrated because I'm not Japanese and I'll never be Japanese. お前は日本人じゃないんだよ。わかった?日本人になれないんだよ。お前、外人。So anyway, yeah, I'm never going to be Japanese, but you know, sometimes you feel like you get a raw end of the stick. People get the raw end of the stick sometimes, but it doesn't matter. You still love being there. You learn from it. Sometimes you complain about it, but you shouldn't complain too much because you're there because you want to be there and it's an interesting place. So you might as well learn from it. Same thing in China, same thing in Hong Kong, same thing in Thailand, same thing all around the world. That's why we want to travel. In the old days, you wanted to go somewhere and spend some time because you wanted to immerse yourself in the culture and get to know the people and what's important to those people and so on. And have some good fun. Nowadays, you just go to get an Instagram post, which is kind of boring. I hate being rushed because, you know, you're so busy looking at the architecture and going to the tourist spots and everything that you don't have any time to just hang out and talk to other tourists or local people. Just relax, you know, write in your journal, read a book, look around, sit on a park bench, have a conversation with an old woman walking a dog, do some mundane, banal things, and just don't feel rushed. That's important. So, you know, getting back to that point where you slow down and really appreciate people, want to touch them, connect with them, understand them. This just drains all the fear and hatred right out of your soul. Because you see that, yeah, people over there in Tanzania or Morocco or people in Mongolia or people in Azerbaijan or Kazakhstan or even Afghanistan are just people. And they have some interesting perspectives. So just pointing out that a particular group of people spawns a certain type of terrorist that has done evil things isn't much of an observation because all cultures have done that in the past. All cultures do it now. It's kind of hard to say that when the United States drone strikes people around the world, it's for the right reasons, so collateral damage is not a big deal. People are going to get killed. It's a war on terror. You can't have a war on terror. You can't shoot terror in the head. You can't double tap terror. You can heal it. You can dispense with it through diplomacy and understanding and dialogue and support. It's true, folks. You can build all the weapons in the world. It's not going to stop all the nonsense. Of course, some people are going to get paid. And if you're a shareholder in one of the military-industrial complex businesses, or any business that supports that, you're probably making money. Bully for you. The guy with the most toys wins. But at the end of the day, think of the sadness and the horror and the terror and the tragedy that happens when people around the world are just, you know, subject to this kind of sense of false scarcity, violence. Yeah, it is systemic. Yeah, it is structural. It's built in. The system's logic demands that we have all this madness going on. It's not necessary. I really believe that. But it's a cultural conundrum that is very, very difficult to solve and contemplate. And so it's not going to be easy for us to fix that at all. We're going to need time. And time is something we just may not have because of climate change. Yes, it's real, just like my chest is real. And, other things that modern industrial oil-fueled, fossil-fueled global life has done to the world. It's kind of made things a bit urgent, and people should understand that, but it's a lot easier to get pissed off at somebody because they're different. We know Islamic extremism is bad, but so is Christian extremism. And I'm not going to be able to do a survey and find out how many Muslims in Indonesia, Malaysia, the United States, Canada, Africa, Europe, Eastern Europe, Russia, the United States New Miracles, and other parts of the world are extremists or not. Is it extremism to have faith? Well, if you're a new atheist, maybe it is. Maybe the scariest bugaboo in the whole wide world is just religious extremism or religion. But I don't think so. Most people are just not extremists. Extremists are not born, they're made. And there are factors, there are reasons in the world, there are things being done in the world to people that drive them towards extremism. You don't just wake up one morning and decide you want to blow up a building. You're subject to various experiences and things, and you look at the world in a certain way. You get indoctrinated, and sooner or later then you're doing nasty things. And you can nip that in the bud if you have the right circumstances. If you have the wrong circumstances, those violent, terrible things are going to arise. Then you start pointing fingers. Who started it? Well, Jimmy's witnesses are going to say Bobby started it, and Bobby's witnesses are going to say Jimmy started it. And then Sally's going to come in and say they just started arguing, and then they started fighting. And, what's the thing? The preconditions for the fight were there. Jimmy and Bobby didn't like each other, and people were egging them on. And so they fought. Of course, it's much more complicated when you're talking about, big old Uncle Sam with all of its military power and might and expertise and wealth, running around the world trying to tell people how to live and what to do. And some people just beg to differ and are willing to give up their lives to fight against somebody telling them how to live. Does it sound familiar, Texas? Mr. Libertarian in Congress, does that sound familiar to not like having somebody tell you how to live your life? We can just slow down a bit and try to understand each other just a wee bit, try to reach out and say, wow, you're pretty interesting. Tell me more about that. I want to know. I want to know your thoughts and feelings because I don't know them. And I think anybody who would listen to you would make you think that they're not that bad. And maybe you could build a bridge of understanding between each other, and then you wouldn't want to have to kill each other. Wouldn't that be nice? But instead we want to get all excited and send our boys and girls abroad so that they can kill and be killed, and it's all so heroic. And at the end of the day, what happens? Well, yes, Steven Pinker, things are better now than they ever have been, but they're not the greatest either. We can do better than that. What happens? The wars just continue. It doesn't end. the suffering and the sanctions and the starvation and the stress. And just like with this COVID thing, people in the States are fighting so much about masks and vaccines and is it good for you, isn't it not good for you, is it experimental, isn't it? Most people don't know how to suss that or figure that out by reading science papers. And they have a hard time trusting experts for good reasons. So they get so mad and riled up at each other that I think that the stress caused by being riled up so much time, so often, so much towards each other is more dangerous, more harmful than the virus itself. I mean, this kind of stress and anger kills people. Now you can say, well, I wouldn't be angry if they just wouldn't tell me this vaccine thing all the time. It's like, dude, okay, you believe in Jesus. I love you, man. I think that's great. Just don't try to convert me. But this is different because it helps. Vaccines help. They're not perfect. There's no panacea. There's no magic bullet. So, yeah, okay, dude, you can try to convert me. That's okay. Tell me about Jesus. I want to know everything you know about Jesus. But I still might not convert. You know, you have an open mind. Oh, maybe the vaccines are good, but I still won't get one. I got my reasons. That's okay. But don't get mad because somebody tried to shame you. You shouldn't have to be shamed into doing something good for public health, but never mind that. It's so controversial. It shouldn't be controversial, but it is. Where I live, it's not a controversy. I watch local news every day. People get on with it. And nobody's upset with each other. And people are wearing their masks, getting their vaccinations. And, you know, they're not worried about pulling out of Afghanistan. Portugal already pulled out of Africa. That was painful. A long, painful history of trying to do the right thing in the African colonies and not really succeeding too much at it. And at the end of the day, you know, what you have are African nations that speak Portuguese, maybe second language, but you don't have Portuguese colonies anymore. So that's history anyway. Now I'm rambling. But think of how damaging it is for you to be angry at other people all the time because they don't have your same ideological point of view, or because they think it's better if you wear a mask indoors in tight quarters or whatever. I don't know how this pandemic's going to pan out, but it's going to last. I mean, all this nonsense is going to go on for years because people just won't get together and agree to take a course of action. Okay, blame everybody. Go ahead, blame. Get angry. Thumbs down. Get pissed off. Tell me I'm a wanker. But I think we could do better if we just listen to each other. Instead of trying to sell each other something all the time, which is what we're getting from the media often, is the commodification of everything. So now they're going to have a reality show about activism. How stupid is that? We're going to make money off of activism, a reality show on it. Oh my God. It's absurd, folks. Somehow we got to get back together. We got to climb out of those screens and start talking to one another and listening to each other again. So, you know, Sam gets stuck on a thing. And maybe I misrepresent him. I'm going to write something, so I'll listen to him carefully. But it just seems like I've heard this over and over again. It's not really about the Islamic terrorists. They exist, but all kinds of bad people exist everywhere. Do I sound like Donald Trump now? Anyway, There are reasons they exist, let's put it that way. And some of these reasons are structural, systemic reasons. Some are ideological, psychological. Some have to do with economics and politics. You can't just say, look, it's the book, it's the Quran. That's the bad thing. If you burned all the Qurans, everything would be good. Not really. There'd be another book. People would find another excuse to hate each other, especially if they're getting messed with all the time. You know, if people from Africa came to the United States and started messing with us, you'd have a whole bunch of terrorists in the United States trying to kill them. Wouldn't you? Tough guy. Who's the best gunfighter you ever saw? You, right? Maybe. Tell me about that MMA fight you had in the bar the other day. Or maybe don't. Tell me about that interesting conversation you had with a Muslim the other day, or with a Christian, or with a French dude, or with a guy from Ghana, or whatever. Tell me what you learned when you had that conversation with that person, and how good you felt afterwards. I'll stop now. I'm happy if somebody listened. I'm happy if somebody comments. I'm happy if somebody subscribes. Anyway, I'm still happy. Bouliam tea, out.